Dale Earnhardt. Now that's a name that strikes fear and leaves an impact when you hear it. So many memories were made by him, his team, and his name. When you think of Dale Earnhardt, you probably have a lot of fond memories of him, whether it was in the Wrangler blue and yellow or in the iconic GM Goodwrench black. Dale Earnhardt grew up a simple man from a simple textile mill town. His escape from the mills, much like his father before him, was through racing. Over the course of Dale's career, he impacted the sport of NASCAR in many ways, and even in death, he still had several impacts on the sport. Many could argue that the race that meant the most to Dale was the Daytona 500. The man won 7 championships, but for 19 years, this one race was the one that he just could not win until 1998. In the 40th running of this race, and Dale's 20th attempt at this race, he was finally the winner of the Daytona 500. After so many tries, Dale was finally on top of the world. He had finally conquered Daytona. It was hard to believe that in only 3 more years, this race would also conquer him. At the end of the 2001 Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated driver Michael Waltrip celebrated his first Daytona 500 victory and his first victory in general. But he did not know that we had also just lost his boss and driver of the 3-car Dale Earnhardt, and obviously it wasn't much to celebrate afterwards. This was one of the saddest moments in the history of NASCAR. However, if the wreck didn't happen, and if Dale Earnhardt was still alive today, here are 5 things that I think would be different in NASCAR. Some good, and some not so good. Number 1, Dale Earnhardt would have retired after the 2004 season. In 2001, Dale Earnhardt was age 49, pushing 50. Surely by then, Dale Earnhardt was at least beginning to consider retirement. In 2004, we saw a new series sponsor, and we also saw the introduction of the chase for the Nextel Cup Championship. Personally, I don't think that Dale would have hated this. I do think, however, that by coincidence, Dale would have chose 2004 to be his last season in NASCAR. Seeing how good 2004 was for his son Dale Jr., maybe he could have used Dale Sr. by his side in order to win the championship that year. Number 2, Dale Earnhardt Jr. wins a championship. Okay, sure, I know Dale Jr. did win 2 Busch Series titles, but during the span of his Cup Series career, he just could never seem to do the same in Cup. 26 wins is still nothing to be ashamed of though, but with the legacy that was put on his shoulders when his father passed away, it's definitely hard to live up to those expectations. In my opinion, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s most competitive seasons were 2004 and 2014. 10 years apart, both years where he won the Daytona 500, however they were of 2 different teams. In my opinion, I still think those seasons would have been that good, and maybe better had he had his father by his side. Personally though, I definitely feel as though Dale Earnhardt Jr. would have won at least 1, maybe even more Cup Series championships had his father survived the crash and been there to support him emotionally. Number 3, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated would still be in business today. It's actually really amazing that Dale Earnhardt Incorporated lasted as long as it did, to be honest. Before beginning a partnership that would become a total sale to Chip Ganassi, DEI was still fielding cars until 2009, 8 years after Dale's passing. Now I've said before, everything involving Teresa Earnhardt and her business decisions is a separate discussion for another day. But I firmly believe that just ever since Dale's accident, she was just never really mentally and emotionally able to run DEI in the long run. However, had Dale been alive, I would have seen this team winning championships and still competing today. Also, I don't even think that Dale Jr. would have went to race for Rick Hendrick in 2008. Now, had the performance of DEI still went away, I do believe that Dale would have been okay with Earnhardt Jr. going to Hendrick. After all, Dale Earnhardt did leave Richard Childress for a brief period. However, whether Jr. leaves or not, I think that DEI would still be around competing today. Number 4, Kevin Harvick would have debuted a few years later. In 2001, after the passing of Dale Earnhardt, a decision was made for the 3 team to keep racing. After all, the funding was already there from GM Goodwrench for the season. So, the smartest thing for that team to do was get a new driver, use the same car as Dale would race, invert the colors of the car to white and red, and debut a new number, and thus RCR then had the 29 car. The driver of this car was Kevin Harvick, RCR's developmental driver at the time. Now personally, I believe there's a great chance that Harvick could have been the driver to take over in the seat of the 3 car after Earnhardt would have retired a few years later. And maybe Richard Childress would have still debuted Harvick in a number 29 car at some point too, but if Dale Earnhardt hadn't passed, we would have never saw Harvick's emotional first win at Atlanta either. Now number 5, and this is the hardest one to say, but we would have lost more drivers. That's very hard to say for certain, but one thing is for certain. When Dale died, within 6 years, we saw so many new changes made for the safety of the sport. After his death, NASCAR made a ton of improvements in terms of safety, which included the requirement for drivers to wear the Hans device, as well as putting an end to open-face helmets. Not to mention, scientists and tracks worked to develop this safer barrier wall system, a wall that is designed to absorb and then release energy from a car when it hits the wall, as compared to a solid wall, which only crushes a car with all of the energy it carries into the wall. Finally, the biggest change was the cars. In 2007, we saw the debut of the Car of Tomorrow. Now, these cars looked huge and bulky, but they were designed that way with the safety of the driver in mind. In 2008, Michael McDowell put these cars to the test during qualifying at Texas Motor Speedway. McDowell veered to the right when he slammed into the wall close to 160 miles per hour, and then he violently flipped through the turn. If that same wreck happened with an older car with no safer barrier wall and no Hans device, that driver would have never raced again. However, McDowell walked away from this crash just fine and is still racing today. Now, we have still seen injuries within NASCAR's top series here and there, but we have not seen a driver die during a NASCAR race in the top series since Dale in 2001. Now, a lot of safety measures were brought up when we lost Adam Petty, but I don't know how quick we would have seen things change if Dale hadn't lost his life in 2001. It's now been 17 years since the last driver death within NASCAR. Before Dale, the longest span without a driver death was 6 years, from 1994 to 2000. As hard as it is to say that, I firmly do believe that if it wasn't for the death of Dale Earnhardt, we may have lost more drivers within these last 17 years. But hopefully, we will never lose another driver on a NASCAR track, all because of the safety measures that were brought in after we lost Dale Earnhardt. Now, that's the 5 things that I believe would be different in NASCAR if we had never lost Dale Earnhardt in 2001. Maybe some things would have been better, but maybe some things would be worse. I hope this video was enjoyable and not too emotional for you. Thanks for watching this video. I encourage you to leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below, and as always, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you can be alerted whenever I drop another video. Thanks so much for watching, take care, and have a great day.